My name is Azin. I'm actually from Iran, and I'm the country head for Africa for ASUS Open Platform Business Group. That's where you get all your main board, graphic cards, everything that you basically have to build a PC. Then everything that is also outside of the PC we handle. I'm sure that you've seen some of our awesome monitors, routers, and so on in Sam's channel also. And at the same time, I handle uh, marketing. So I'm the regional marketing director for Middle East and Africa region.
As Azin mentioned there, I am actually doing some work with ASUS from a content creation point of view, but I want to be clear that this podcast has nothing to do with that. I have known Azin for many years. We've obviously worked the gaming industry in South Africa is very small, which means I've seen a lot of her over the years. We've become friends, and her story is insane. It's absolutely insane to me. And I know that this is specifically a podcast about esports jobs, and we do talk a lot about her job, which involves some element of esports. But I am constantly fascinated by who she is as a person, where she came from, growing up in Iran, and then moving into such a high managerial position in an IT company ultimately, and just her journey is mental. And of course, if you follow the news, you currently know about the revolution taking place in Iran right now, something that's very close to her heart. And all of these things just made me feel like we needed to chat to her, and I needed to bring her on the podcast to understand her job, understand the role she now plays. Also, because I think that we haven't done like a super corporate conversation yet on this season of esports jobs. This one is that corporate conversation that needed to happen. But also, I just think that this is an inspirational person, and more people need to know her story. And I hope that someone listening will be inspired by her. And I think you will be. So we're just gonna jump right on in. So, as in, you are a fascinating one for me because you were born in Iran, you grew up in Iran, and you don't normally hear about women, specifically from a place like Iran, rising up in the tech space, especially. And yet, here you are. So, tell me, when did your journey in tech start?
Yeah. So, people usually have this idea that they don't want to share their age much. But, for me, you really need to go backwards in tech history to when I started in ASUS, actually. So, actually, when I started in ASUS, we just finished launching. It was already launched. So I kind of joined in the middle for a P55 motherboard. So you all you techie people can go way back to see when I started. At that time, I was actually 21. I was still studying, and I joined ASUS at the same time, so worked at the same time that I was studying. So that time, the Intel socket was LGA 1156. It's really, really ancient. So to be honest, it's because actually I did get a job opportunity in ASUS Dubai. Prior to that, I was doing programming, actually SQL database, and then before that, I had more or less some part-time jobs like every student would do. In Iran, also, it's not common for ladies to start working in a young age, to be honest. But, my dad was very specific to him. It was always the case of, oh, you want this? It's very nice. You have to pay for it. So you keep learning about the real world a little bit too quick. And then after I found the job in ASUS, you can see 14 years later, it's still here.
That's incredible, and I'm interested. What did you study? Because you mentioned you were studying. So, what was it that you were studying before you joined ASUS?
Yes, so I am forever thankful to my parents that they forced me to do this, although at that time I absolutely hated it. But I studied 2 BA at the same time by force of parents. Obviously, you're a kid, you don't really want to do that. But I have two bachelors. One is IT science, and the second one, which was a difficult one, is IT engineering. And to be honest, because half of one BA I completely studied in English. So that is the reason that I also could get the job in ASUS. That's why I'm always also thankful to them to force me to do it because I really, really didn't want.
I'm curious, like going into study IT, and I've obviously I know your age. Whether you were in the Middle East, whether you were in South Africa, whether you were in Europe, at that point, women in IT, that was not a very common field. So I mean, how many other ladies were in your classes when you were studying?
Actually, okay, to be honest, Iranian women are very, very well educated. Most of them really have high education level. Really, it's like, if I remember, it's a crazy number, like 80% of them all have BA degree and above. It's one of the highest in the world, actually. So, to be honest, at that time, IT was very, same as you say, it was in the beginning of it to be, even people realize what it is actually, or what can it help, or what field you will go. Now today, when we're speaking, we don't only have hardware, software, we have so many different engineering that falls under IT, that for us, even at that time, was really combination of both. So you can imagine how big IT has become. That time, again, because girls in Iran, they are very big on education, or some forced by their parents like me. Actually, the number of girls in class was not too low, but I can say guys were more. It's true. Maybe mm, 70-30 if we want to do the split. Yeah, not bad. Actually, not bad. Or
That's
60-40.
Yeah, that's really impressive because I mean, I think this is the thing. Obviously, like you read things on the news when you come from Western countries and you have a very like blocked mind, but that's far more women studying IT. When I think about when I was at university, where there was maybe like one or two ladies, so that's really impressive and forward thinking. Was ASUS when you came into that world, coming into ASUS, was that always something you wanted to do? You wanted to work for a big hardware company like ASUS? Was that always the goal when you were
Yes.
studying?
Yes. So I still remember my first interview that we had in the office. They did ask me, the interview questions, where do you see yourself? So I'm this young kid that I'm like going in for interview for, actually at that time it was a designer level, but it was more, I wouldn't say part-time type of designer, but they knew that I was still studying. And at the same time, it was the level of, I wouldn't say high level in the marketing team as an organization, but I wouldn't say also like it was a very low level. So it was where you start. We can say like this, where you start in ASUS. So in that interview, I told the lady that was interviewing me that I really want to be able to live in different countries. And from what I understand, that can only happen if you have very high position, like to handle a region, to be the director to few countries so that you can travel or live in different countries. So that is what I really want to happen to me. And she said that in ASUS, we really, really care to have ambitious people and people that are basically proactive. So they don't wait for stuff to happen to them. So later on, she told me actually that answer was the reason that I got the job, because they even wanted someone to be all against the odds. And I have to say, one thing that I really appreciate working in this company, that I love really working in this company, is because ASUS is a very, out of all the companies that I know about more or less, actually the percentage of females working in ASUS is quite high. All of us, so you also know better than me that we really do have, to be honest, I can say 50-50 split is very impressive for IT industry. IT industry is very male dominated in any country, some countries more, some countries less. But in South Africa, I see that is really male dominated, especially on higher level management. And I can say for ASUS South Africa, both of the team leaders or country heads, me and the other lady, were both female. So the highest level in country that it can get, it is still by the female part. So it's really, really nice to work in such company.
It is amazing because that's something I get to work with the ASUS South Africa team, and it is there are far more women, and it's fun because you're used to only. I'm always used to working with men, chatting to men in the marketing teams, and when it comes to ASUS South Africa, lots of ladies involved. I want to shift this to gaming because we're talking about jobs in esports. Your job is a bit
Definitely.
broader than that, but we got to talk gaming. Were you playing games growing up? Was that something you were interested in?
Yes. So I played the first version of Counter-Strike when I was 16. So at that time, you still needed to go to these cafes and you sit and you wait for the game to load. And obviously, I'm from Iran, so you can understand all the limitations with sanctions and everything is like probably cracked version. We don't get the real anything there. So you can consider that for maybe play with your, let's say, teammates 1 to 2 games, we spent hours because it would be cut, now we need to start again. And if you remember, if you played the first Counter Strike, it's very different even from the CSGO first version that we played. But I did play that for a very, very long time. And it was a little bit unorthodox for a girl to be up to be outside until 11 p.m. So that's when it stopped, and everyone was like, "You back to study."
I love that. And it's so, I mean, this will obviously come out a little bit later, but ironically, today, a lot of people believe that CS2 is going to get launched today. There's a lot of talk happening. We don't know if
I
that's
know,
the
I heard
case.
about that. It's so exciting.
So we got to get you back into Counter Strike. That's going to be the goal. Because you spend so much time traveling now because that is your job involves a lot of travel. You're backwards and forwards. Do you have time to play games anymore, or is your time spent catching up on sleep?
So to be honest, I find playing games with a little bit of therapeutical. Actually, it helps you. I understand for a lot of gamers, it will be like this. It helps you to get away from maybe a little bit of a real world that you might have anxiety or stress in it. For a lot of gamers, is like this, and you enter the gaming world that you really can be whatever you want in it. That's, I truly believe that's the beauty of it. It's really like a little bit therapy for people, if you ask me. And at the same time, to have something, doing something that is not only work, same as you say, or not only travel, or not spend all your days with numbers and computers and so on. So I do put some time to play. At the moment, I don't own a gaming PC because in our office we have how many that anytime that we want we can turn on and play, which sometimes we do play tournaments in the office with each other, like not to gamble but like tease each other and so on. But to be honest, now I haven't touched Counter Strike for very long, but I have played games like Taken, Mortal Kombat, those kind of games that you can quickly play against each other. And then the last thing that I really enjoy playing is all the VR games. I also really like those. But for us, there's also another thing. We get to experience a lot of products based on different games. So for us, we have to test. Obviously, we have to promote it, then make sure it's useful for the users, for the correct TA. So we have no choice. We really end up testing, experiencing a lot of products, starting from peripherals all the way to, let's say, monitors or a full PC. What works better with what? It is very cool part of the job, I have to say.
How much of your job involves that though? Because I think sometimes people think, okay, cool, if you work at a company like ASUS, you've got, like you said, you've got all these gaming PCs around you. You can spend your days just having the best time. But I'm presuming that that's actually a very small part of your job.
My job, yes. But now we have people in marketing, especially in the PR role. So when they are in discussion to create content for a specific product or co-work with an influencer to create the specific message we want to deliver to the users for why they need the product, they really, really need to spend enough time with the product to know everything. And there is a lot of back and forth discussion also with our BU back in our headquarters in Taiwan. So they will end up experiencing the product really to its core. So sometimes I do envy them because they spend almost, I can say, half of their time playing with the product, testing the product, experiencing the product. For me, I will, when they build the finished product, they will just help let me like have a little bit of test and fun. That's my part. Very, very small part. I would say 5%.
I know this is also I want to go off on this tangent and possibly explore this conversation a little bit as well because it is one of the reasons we'll talk about esports and all of those things in a bit because obviously the podcast is about your job. But it was something you mentioned about playing the first Counter Strike when you were younger and having to go to these internet cafes and I do think that that's really interesting to me because it's something we've spoken about before, especially in countries like Iran, where maybe it is a lot more difficult for the youth to go out and party the way traditionally someone watching this podcast would think. Do you
Very
think
true.
gaming is just far more important in those cultures because it is a way to interact and socialize where maybe you can't necessarily do that in other spaces?
Yes, true. So if you remember, we had the similar discussion when you went to Saudi. We were talking about the same topic. So obviously, big part of that is religion. So in Iran, we do have obviously in Saudi is the same in a whole Middle East. We have almost 50% of people truly religious, perfect, everything they do follow, and 50% they don't really specifically follow a certain religion. So to be honest, 50%, if you want to consider whole Middle East, is quite huge. And then when we come to, let's say, the northern part of Africa part, that it really does shift. It become 80% really religious, and then even more, and including Saudi, Jordan, those countries. So Iran, I would say, from my point of view, is really 50-50. But when we do go to details to be like what this person can actually do for fun. So to be honest, this person cannot drink, cannot party, or party the way we know it. Let's say like this. There are no bars for this person, and they cannot gamble. So there are many internet cafes, or at the same time the let's say gaming cafe that is a core, but then around it, let's say, is our pool tables or stuff that can match with the religious culture. It becomes very, very important, very big part of their life. So you can see that still for the gamers part through the region of Middle East, actually the female part is very, very small. But to be honest, the male part, that you go out with your friends and you want to spend 7 to 8 hours with them, they do end up in very, very high end gaming cafes. And it is one of the reasons that actually in South Africa, we do not have those kind of gaming cafes. We really don't. The ones that I'm talking about, that level, that is a place that you will really go to spend 7, 8 hours with your friends just for fun, is not here.
Do you think
It's
like
very different level.
very different. Do you think that that's also maybe a reason why like esports hasn't really grown the way we want in South Africa because there isn't that community aspect of going to those internet cafes, playing with your friends, competing with your friends in those spaces?
Very much so. So you see, the religious part of the Middle East also, um, not that it's not allowed for rest of Middle East, but it is a little bit frowned upon for to be out three girls with two boys or vice versa until midnight. Whereas for boys, it is accepted. So when you go out with your buddies and you're out until midnight, but you're in a gaming cafe, also your parents more or less are fine. And at the same time, there is no such I wouldn't say rules, but there's no such cultural things in South Africa. So we call it individual gaming. Individual gaming in South Africa, I wouldn't say is very huge compared to the population, but to be honest, is much bigger than you really go out with your team or a certain way of feeling on a team. You can basically play with anyone here. Whereas there, it's your buddies, your cousins, your schoolmates. You really build something. There are many gaming cafes that in the area, in the region, they benefit a lot from these young kids.
How do you think we grow? I mean, because this must be part of your job, right? You're in the space. I understand that you're selling hardware at the end of the day, but how much does esports play a role in the job that you do?
Very much. You can consider, just give you one example. So many games, you really, really need to upgrade your GPU for sure. You cannot play. There are many examples for that, especially, NVIDIA. I truly believe they're all geniuses in that level because to be honest, it's really complete difference when you play with different GPUs on a specific game. But then you cannot only rely on the GPU. It will be directly related to memory, then later related to power supply, right? You cannot have very high-end GPU with very entry level power supply. It will not work. So everything is related together. So when, let's say, the latest triple game is released, obviously we see a lot of upgrade market for the GPU. So for us and our business, it's directly related to esports, games, gamers, individual gamers, gaming cafes. From what I can tell you, a good gaming cafe, they have no choice but to upgrade at least 1 to 2 of their rooms. And we're talking in Middle East, huge gaming cafes with 6 different rooms. So they do not have a chance because they will lose the customers. So for gaming and gamers, actually, no matter from Intel, Nvidia, or AMD, also Microsoft, they all expect only growth year on year, every year. So I believe in the future, South Africa will also get to a point that we will see more esport teams. When we know each other for so long, but when we also started, the esport teams were how many? Now they're really, you can see more and more, or tournaments or online tournaments and so on. So I believe we are on the growth path, but definitely because we're not limited to this fun only, by religion or culture, then the growth is a little bit less speedy. I can say like this.
So if there is someone who's listening to this podcast, they're learning about jobs in esports, and that's where their passion lies, right? They're a Counter-Strike fan, they love watching all the CS events. Is looking at a position at a company like ASUS, is that something that would allow them to not only feed that passion for esports, but also obviously create a career in this space? Is that something that they could look into doing?
Definitely. In my career, I think I have interviewed, I always say at least 200 people minimum. I think that's a very, very low number, to be honest. But one of the questions I always ask them is, do you play game? Do you own a PC or laptop? And if a PC, what is the spec? I obviously I don't need you to tell me it's all Asus, but if you do, that's perfect. But I really, really want to know what you consider as your gaming PC to check your passion. IT is, you really need to be passionate for our division. Obviously, laptop division have more of a, not only gaming but also lifestyle, is a little bit different way of doing the business plan. But for us, for components, beside considering SMB or any sort of, let's say, commercial business to business, actually our main part, main core is two topics. First, definitely gaming. Definitely gaming. I will elaborate a little bit more. Second, what we consider pro art. So content creators also need a very, very high-end PC for their life to be easier, like yourself, right? And at the same time, for their work to be more efficient and save time. So these two categories, actually, you really, if you want to work in this industry, you really need to have the passion for it. I will always very proudly say that ASUS is the first brand that created ROG as for specific TA. Before that, everyone, including ASUS, they created the same motherboard. They were like, oh, this is everyone can use it. You know, gamers can use it, content creators can use it. Everyone there will be fine with it. But to be honest, actually, specific features and specific, even in terms of hardware, specific things should be created specifically for gamers. And that is one of the reasons I'm always very proud to work in this company, that we really create a product that is for dedicated TA. Even inside the gaming, we're like, okay, hardcore gamer, this one, you want to do overclocking, this one, you want to do content creation, this one, you really want to do a little bit more cost effective, this one. So I really feel when someone has the passion for it, for component part, is very different than someone that maybe only want to do sales or marketing.
We've spoken a bit about what you do, what your job entails, and I'm curious, what does a normal day at the office look like for you? So if you're going to wake up in the morning, because I've got to speak to lots of people. So some people, they wake up, they're on set, they're running around with cameras and stuff. I think people presume you just get up and you sit behind a desk all day. But like we've mentioned numerous times while we've been chatting, I've known you for a very long time. You are probably one of the busiest people outside of myself that I've met. So walk us through what a normal day at work is for a Zin.
Okay, we don't have normal days.
There we go.
No, but to be honest, now jokes aside. So let's say first of all, I'm always early to office. So our working hours is at 8. I'm usually in by 7. To be honest, usually a lot of part of my job is spent on meetings, really. Very, very boring, I know. But because I handle different branches in Middle East, in North Africa, in West Africa, and in Middle East, we have really quite few. So actually, I have not daily calls with them, but if you want to split it down into weekly, it already will become quite a few. So I will, from the day before, I will sort out all the meetings that are happening and what am I supposed to do during the day. But actually, the rest of my day, honestly, that's what we call, I call it account managing. So, when we consider account managing, usually it's like you have a target, then you push for the target, you reach, perfect. For me it's very very different level. So account managing for me start from distributors all the way to mass retail, mass e-tail, all the way to open channel. So I need to look into every single layer, what is happening, everything going smoothly. Do I need to interfere with something? Does my team need help with anything? Do we need to even get up and go and meet someone to get an answer or even get an order, depending on the situation? So I really, today I was also discussing it with my boss. I consider, oh, actually, really, my job, I consider account managing is really, really the biggest part. Then uh, we're in corporate. There's a lot of reporting. I know a lot of people listening to this will not like it, but this is the corporate job. You always will have a lot of things you need to fill in, you need to submit, different systems you need to go to press approve or reject. So I wouldn't say that is the small part, but to be honest, reporting is the common language to really understand what's going on for our head office. So that part, this just needs to be done.
How do you cope as someone that has to look after, like you mentioned, all these different regions, obviously, and very different cultures in those regions? And I know within the office you're dealing with a global company. So there's so many different cultures and understandings. You're in charge of so many of this. How do you handle that? Because I can't imagine it's easy to bad. She's laughing because she knows. I mean, how do you do that?
Okay, I get that question quite a lot. Really, like because I have quite many roles and positions, really. Um, so to be honest, my answer is always very simple. You usually really love. You should love what you do. You really because most of your daytime is really spent on it. So I really feel you should really love it. I always say I'm the biggest fangirl for ASUS, seriously. So you should love what you do. Then your life will already become something you love. Let's say your life become your job, or your job is basically all you do, no matter which way you want to look at it. For me, it's really the case. Like I really have back to back, not only meetings but things that I need to do. When I really sit at the end of the day, it's already 4:30 or 5. So of course there's still a lot of things I need to do, no matter prepare for rest of the region, prepare for the newest, let's say, launch that's coming up, or having to do additional things for let's say something that we're bringing to South Africa for the first time that you also posted about it last week. So those things are all additional things that don't happen every day. But when it does happen, you need to spend more time on it. So, on addition to all the positions that I handle, I need to make sure all those things are going well. So, in reality, your life become your job, but since it's something you love, it's still fine. It's still okay. I can't continue doing it like this.
Yeah, we've spoken a lot about your job, ASUS, and I mean you're very passionate about what you do, but are people surprised? And I'm going to delve a bit into you personally, and this is what I wanted to talk about because I think that you are such an interesting person. And obviously, I am very biased. I've known you for a long time, and I think your story is one that people should know. But are people surprised when they find out that you grew up in Iran, that that's where you're originally from, and you're now sitting in this
All the
position? I mean, surely it must be a constant surprise for people.
all the time, all the time. So obviously because of my accent, I always get the question, where are you from? Usually people guess is nowhere close to Iran. It's usually Spain or Italy, or Iranians are also always very mixed because of our location. So I don't also mind it. People guessing South America, Spain, or something like that. I don't mind it. But to be honest, yes, being a female in IT industry is already um, I don't want to say put the word difficult, but I can say unique. Yeah. Being a female in a high management level, I would say like this: being a female in high management level in IT is not common. Being a female high manager in Middle East, I wouldn't say really common. Then also for me, because I lived in different countries throughout my whole life, so that already adds to how were you traveling this much, how did you handle the things from where you're from, how did you handle your job, and then when you add my positions into it, because it's really like how you do it, you need to tell us how it becomes interesting. I know that already being a female handling this role in South Africa, to be honest, is not common. Is not common.
It's not common in South Africa, but more so coming from a country where obviously there is a fight for women's rights right now. There is a push for that, and yet you've broken this mold. Do you think that that's a lot to do with your parents and your upbringing? Obviously, them pushing you to study, them pushing you, your dad, like you said, your father saying, "Hey, if you want it, you got to pay for yourself." He allowed you to be the independent woman you are now.
100%. All I am is because of them, and obviously all the people around. Like in a very early stage, you will learn that the inequality, is that the right word, right? It's it's not right because of where you grew up, but you constantly have to fight it. And there are many things that you find really unfair. And that is the main reason why the current revolution is going in Iran. And I'm so proud to be a Persian woman because of them, because this is also the first ever woman-led revolution. We didn't have this kind of revolution previously in anywhere. So that makes me so proud, because my entire life I went through similar things, and to me it was also unfair. And obviously, me being a little bit rebellious, also I was the one that I also know this is not fair, fight it, have some arguments. And I even believe not only in the East, but to be honest, you see it also in the West. Even when you enter the meeting room, it's still not the same way of behavior. When there's a lady also, I would say. But at least I can say the whole world is changing very slowly, but I can see the change from 10 years ago, let's say, up until now. It's completely different, and that makes me very happy. Going back to the Iranian woman and the location I'm from, obviously I believe, comparing to, let's give you as an example, because I know how much you care about these things and how much you it's important to you. And your principle is very like strict and like high on that level. Like, I believe between, let's say, me and you, this is just reality that I needed to put a little bit more fight. And I think that that makes it different way of fighting for me and you, because you still being where you were born, you still felt, oh, even this to me is not fine. So you had some stuff that you wanted to change. And for me, being in a completely different uh, place, I also felt this is not fine. So we both were at least the same mindset that it shouldn't be like this for different scenarios.
I think what I love about the insight that you bring, like you said, we grew up in very different spaces. I grew up, yes, feeling that inequality, but not necessarily being thrown in jail for it. Whereas you had to experience that. But one of the conversations that we had a chance to have when I was talking about doing work in the Middle East, and I remember speaking to you about this, saying, I don't know how I feel. You know, there's issues, there's this inequality, the way women are treated. Is it right for me to go there? And you said something that stuck with me for so long, where you said, we have to do what we do. We have to stand up. We have to show every little girl, like, look, if you want to be an esports commentator, you can be an esports commentator. There she is. She's in your country standing up doing it. And I think it's very similar to you. You've risen up. You're the power businesswoman everyone should aspire to. It's the movies that you watch, right? That's what you did. And I think that that's very inspirational. And do you feel that on your shoulders though? Do you feel the weight of that, knowing that that is the role you play for your cousins, your nieces, other young girls who know your family? Do you feel that that is something, the role that you need to fulfill for them?
Every day every day that I wake up, I'm like, you need to make sure that someone knows that they shouldn't, let's say, settle for the rules that it forced on them, or you should be the reason that someone feel that it's possible. Same as you say, we had the discussion that you felt like you had this dilemma, what must you do? And I was like, if you remember, I said, Sam, imagine you don't go, you believe this is wrong, then on that stage it will only be guys. There's also nothing wrong with that, but if you go, there is a girl with those guys, and this can show not only to the guys that are there, but everyone, that there's nothing actually wrong with the girl being dressed like this, not covering her hair on the stage with the people. There is no need to be disrespected or felt violated. Or no, people can survive and exist like this. There's no issue. So you are setting the precedent that there is absolutely nothing wrong with this, watch me. So this point is, I also really think about it every single day, that it can affect people from my country all the way to even South Africans or any location that I am, or any person in my team that is sitting, let's say in Egypt, sitting in Dubai. There are many females there. So it can be also a proof to them that something is possible. And that's why a little bit I feel the pressure as well for myself. Even sometimes I really do feel it, that like, oh, I can't mess it up, or I can't let like someone treat me unfairly, even if it's in business, just because of my gender, or if this needs to be done better, because I don't want anyone to feel, oh my God, girls can do one, two, three. So it's like a little bit extra pressure from my side, because even maybe none of these scenarios is happening, but I feel that as long as there are people like me and you to set the example that, yeah, this is possible, why not? I can be in Middle East on stage with these boys, I can sit in a meeting full of men and it only be me, no problem. Then there is someone, I truly believe, maybe a little girl hearing about it, seeing you, hear it even from their dad, and they'd be like, actually, yes, why not? I can.
I love it. I love the inspirational side. Now you mentioned some of the difficulties there, and I'm sure you get this. And I think this is what women put on themselves, all women, which is this idea of I cannot fail because I'll be failing all women. I can't make a mistake at work because then they'll blame all women. It leads into my next question, which I ask everyone, which is what would you say is the hardest part of your job? Is it that, or is there something else that you find quite difficult?
Okay, I can say that I'm used to that, to make sure I succeed for so that the pressure I put on myself, so that's from me. But when you say which is the hardest part of your job, I need to look at it without, let's consider if even I was a guy or I was a girl, young, old, doesn't matter. So this question I also got actually previously from our VP previously, because I had so many different roles in ASUS. So I wanted to, obviously it was a casual chat. So I told him sales, marketing, admin part, HR part, I can't even point which one is difficult as long as I do it myself. For me, the most difficult part of the job is managing a team. You're managing someone else. Your job becomes, you need to make sure they do the job the best way possible. And especially when you're given the manager role, means you now must not do something you used to do before. So you're supposed to do something else, and you have somebody that you're managing that's doing the previous thing you did. So to be honest, your role is, you will suck, you should consider success when that person do it better than you. That is very difficult thing to do, because humans are, one day they're sad, one day they're very happy, very ambitious, one day they're like, oh, today I don't even want to be here, one day. So in order to manage someone else's with all their good and bad emotions, everything they're going through, everything related to their life, that's the hardest part of the job, to manage others. If it's by me, no problem. And any job, no job is hard for me, really. Any job is fine. But to manage others, to make sure they do something better than you, this should be your pride. Like, oh, see, I managed her. She even did it better than me. He even did it better than me. This is excellent, perfect. But to get to that point, you will die and come back to life 15 times until it happens.
I love that. I also think that that's like a very common trait, not just with women, but men as well, like high achievers, where you find it very difficult to relinquish control and say, okay, I've got to trust you to do this yourself. I mean, I think that's what it comes to. I can't imagine doing it. That's why I don't work in corporates. I cannot imagine giving someone else that power.
I know you and your characters so well, because there's such a thin line in between. I am supporting you and helping you that you make it happen, and I'm doing it. It's such a thin line. that you will so frequently find yourself doing it because as a perfectionist, both of us, we really want it to be done well. So that person will never actually get a chance to make a mistake and learn or grow. So it's so difficult. You're in constant battle with yourself how to make this person's success. I always say it's really similar to parenting. Parenting is very big management role. So you can consider you suddenly have like four male kids that all are 40 something year old that you have no connection with, but now you need to need to parent them and make sure they succeed. It's very also rewarding at the same time, to be honest, but very can be very drowning at the same time.
I think you've just like hit the nail on the head though. More corporates need to hire women into higher management because they understand the role of parenting. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right?
True,
This is
true.
this is my favorite question to ask because I always get a new and different answer, not necessarily the one I'd expect. But what would you say is the best part about your job?
Okay. So the tech part, I might not look like a nerd, but I'm like a very deep. Don't even don't even start talking to me about comics books and Avengers and Star Wars because with this podcast will take another 4 hours to finish. But to be honest, the tech part, especially the hardware part, is really my favorite. I still remember the goosebumps I got when I first saw the Aura sync for all the RGB that sync together. That was also one of our first things that we were to the market. Later on, everyone obviously followed, but for us when we created it, I really was speechless for like 10 seconds. So to be honest, the tech part, but if we want to go a little bit deeper, hardware first, but motherboard, specifically the chip part. I mean, for sure, you need to understand how this like tiny thing can do so many things. I still can't believe who was able to create this. Like I always joke with the rest of the colleagues, like it should be some level of witchcraft that really created these things with all the pins to be able to process a lot. Always fascinates me. Every time we have a new product and I'm in head office, I'm always in the front row. I'm always the one in the BU side meetings playing with the product. And I don't mean playing on the PC, rotating it, look at it up, down from this side. Then, oh my God, is it waterproof? Really? Let's try it. Is it, we have so many tests that we do in HQ. I want to go all the way always to R&D lab. And obviously we all know that ASUS is a great company with great quality products. So we don't create like very entry products, so it's always best of the best. So every single time we have a hero product, it's like I'm alive again. So it really makes me happy. The product part, the hard tech part, the hardware part, and the chip itself. That is very magnificent.
We need to do a whole episode on Azin walking you through a chip because she's done it for me once before. She is so passionate about what she does. I absolutely love it.
You again remember I joined my hardware tech part. We not that we just launched, we were all kind of in the middle of it for LGA 1156. Then when I finally got the marketing role for launch, we launched Z680. That was my first launch. It was LGA 1155. And then like I completely, it's one of my dreams to one day go to the factory, the Intel factory to see.
We gotta make that come true. Thank you so much for chatting to us. If you want to find out what Azin is up to, you'll need to follow the ASUS social media accounts. We're not going to give out all her personal stuff. You are an inspiration to women around the world, and thank you so much for chatting to us. You've been listening to Tech Girl Talks. It is a podcast that I host about the gaming and esports industry. This season's been focused on jobs within esports, and I hope that you've got something from it. We've spoken to so many interesting people. Azin was just one of of 9, 10 people that have shared their jobs, and we haven't even chatted to like professional players. So that's kind of cool, right? We've really looked at the ins and outs of the industry. Of course, as per usual, if you enjoyed it, I'd love it for you to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, comment, do whatever you can on your preferred platform. And if you want to chat to me about anything you've heard or watched, then hit me up. It's at TechGirlZA, pretty much all over social media.